Hi, this is Robin, and in this video workshop, I'm going to be talking about how to capture intricately detailed subjects as selections in Photoshop. Now, as good as Photoshop's automated tools have become, it really still can be tough to make accurate selections of very complex, delicate, or intricately detailed objects in order to make either targeted enhancements to them or to swap backgrounds behind them. So if you have subjects like this tree with tons of branches of all different sizes, if you have architecture with cutouts and very intricate little details, hair that's flyaway or frizzy, feathers, fur, spokes in wheels, anything that has a lot of very small, intricate details, that's when you need something beyond the current Photoshop automated tools, at least current at this point in time when I'm recording this, okay? So in this workshop, I'm going to show how to use Photoshop's calculations command in order to analyze your image content and then create selections or masks of very intricate content. Now, typically the calculations command selections will work better than select subject, remove background, which is pretty much the inverse of select subject, select and mask, or even working with individual red, green, and blue color channels to isolate very complex subjects. So I would say, again, I keep hammering the word complex subjects. Calculations is not needed for simpler object selections. You can use any of those automated tools like the object selection tool or the quick mask or things like that for simpler selections. But don't be freaked out by the name calculations in calculations command. Photoshop uses the math, but it's hidden. You don't have to be a math guru to work with this. I'm certainly not. You can work with the calculations command visually. So that's what we're going to show and be looking at in the step-by-step demos in this video. So quick workshop overview. I'm going to provide an introduction to the calculations command, what it is, how it works, and so just a few benefits of using it. And then I'll have two step-by-step demos that use a mix of the calculations command features with two different image examples, just so you can see it in different contexts and not think that it's a one-trick wonder, okay, a one-trick pony or whatever the expression is. Anyway, I will put the chapter start times in the description below the video, so if you want to hop around and maybe skip the intro after you hear it the first time, then feel free to do that. I'll also include links to my other selections-oriented workshops down in that description also. I do have a variety of tutorials on different selection and selection refinement topics, and again, they're geared towards less complex subjects, or if you want to make selections to use in compositing. So anyway, you can check those out if you're interested in other approaches to making selections in Photoshop. With regard to subscriptions, if you've already subscribed to my YouTube channel, there is no need to do anything. If you're new and if you'd like to get a single notification from YouTube when I post new content, please click the free subscribe button and the black bell icon below this video. And you'll find if you hunt around on my channel that I have a mix of playlist categories there on various Photoshop topics, and they're sort of categorized by theme. And then I do release free Photoshop workshops each month. So then you would just get the notification to those if you do that subscribe and click on that black bell icon. So anyway, with that background underway here, let's just start with the introduction. So by way of introduction, I wanted to talk about what is the calculations command, how it works, and what are the benefits of using it. So you may not have heard of it. It's certainly not one of the widely used or well-known Photoshop functions, but the calculations command lets you blend two red, green, or blue color channels from either one or two RGB images in order to create a third channel. So you're starting with two individual channels and you're ending up with a third channel, and that third channel is known as an alpha channel. Now, what alpha channels do is they store grayscale transparency information for a layer, and that's what helps us create more intricate selections. Now, you must, in order to use this calculations command, work with RGB documents. So if when we get to the demo and you're trying it on your own images, if what you're seeing in my demos does not appear in your Photoshop workspace, then you're going to have to be sure that your image is designated as being an RGB image. If you're new to Photoshop and don't know how to do that, just come to the top of the workspace here, up to the interface, up to the image menu, left click on that to expand it. And the first topic here is mode. So you're going to come to the flyout for mode and just be sure that RGB color is checked. So you can see, even though I have a black and white image here, it is designated as RGB color. And any image that you want to work with the calculations command will have to have that checked. The other thing I'll mention right here, but I will probably mention it again in the demo, is that it would be preferable, and I recommend that you also make sure that your image is 16 bits per channel. So if it's currently 8 bits like this one, then you can click to make it a 16-bit, because that will give you smoother results and higher fidelity results from the calculation selections that you're making. So just a recommendation, and you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Okay, so what happens is when you apply the calculation, and you might be starting with a color image, so you can just ignore this other than for the fact that it's showing you that that's an intricate image. When you apply the calculations command, your image will appear in black and white. And by blending multiple RGB or red, green, and blue channels temporarily in black and white, you're creating contrast. So you can see how stark this is. That will help Photoshop find the edges of your subject. It'll see these edges of both the big branches and the little branch, whatever it is in your image. Having stark black and white contrast will help Photoshop see the edges and make them easier to select. Okay, so that'll make for a cleaner selection. And calculations can be used in a variety of ways, but for purposes of this video, I'm only going to show how to use it as a means to an end for making a selection or a mask. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus on here. Now, the calculations command definitely gives you this extra level of selection refinement beyond using even a single red, green, or blue channel. So some people will say, oh, well, go to the channels panel. Here is my channels panel over here on this tab. And if you click individually on the red, green, or blue channel, find which one has the greatest contrast, and that will help you make your selection. In fact, one of my videos, other videos that I'll put the links to, talks about doing just that. But this calculations command goes beyond this, because not only would you be able to use a single channel, like over from this channels panel, but you can mix or match two channels with calculations, and you can also apply a blend mode that will help bring out the image or the edge contrast even more. So it's sort of like working with an individual channel, RGB channel on steroids. It just kind of bumps it up to that next layer. So let me just, instead of talking all generically here, show you something about the variety of selections that can be made in Photoshop and what the motivation is for using calculations if you have an intricate subject like that. All right, so clearly we have a lot of teeny tiny branches, thick branches, big tree trunk. So let me just show you. So if we were to use select subject in Photoshop to make a selection of this image, let me click up here. This is what select subject produces. Now, clearly, it's just a big blob. You've missed almost all of the detail in that tree and all those branches. So select subject is not going to help you if you wanted to make, let's say, color changes to the tree or put a nice sky selection behind this or something of that nature, make the branches in the tree brighter or darker, whatever your subject is that has a lot of detail to it. Select subject is probably not going to help you. Same thing for remove background. And I mentioned remove background is kind of the inverse of select subject. So, it's really not going to help you. You get a little bit more with remove background, but clearly you're missing most of the detail in that picture. If we go to select color range, which is from the select menu, you'll see you get a lot more detail. Now that's getting you more into the range of getting a decent selection for an intricate subject. But even with all of this detail, you don't need to be watching where I'm clicking over here. I'd say watch the transition between what select color range was able to select and what the calculations command will be able to select. So watch in areas like here where there's a lot of black, or just watch the image generally to see what the calculations command adds. So look at that. You're getting all of that. Let me go back to select color range and back here to the calculations command. So you can see, I live near San Francisco, and there's the Golden Gate Bridge and, all those cables and things like that. There is no way select color range, remove background, or select subject would capture all those little cables. So something like the calculations command will let you do that. Okay, so that is why I think my demos will make it very clear, what you can achieve with this calculations command. And I'd say if you just follow the steps and eyeball your results, you really do not need to know the mechanics of how it operates or the math behind how it operates. But that said, if you're relatively new to Photoshop, you definitely will need to be able to use both Layers panel and the Channels panel. I'm circling up here on the upper right in case you're not noticing. So this is the Layers panel we're in right now, and this is the Channels panel over here. So you're going to have to know how to use both. If you are not seeing the Channels panel, come to the top of your interface to the Window menu. Click on that and come down to where it says Channels. Just highlight it and left click to open up the Channels panel. So you're going to need to be able to work with both of those. Now, I said I'd talk just briefly about what are the benefits. Well, I've just shown you one benefit here. So with very precise selections or layer masks, it's possible to make tone, so for instance, darkness or brightness adjustments, hue or color adjustments, or any other kind of creative adjustments that you want to make to very detailed subjects without spilling into or onto other parts of your image. So you want to keep things very contained when you're making adjustments, and with intricate subjects, you don't want it spilling off. Also, with using something like the calculations command, then you can swap backgrounds or replace skies more accurately, even more accurately than the masking that is in sky replacement. So if you've never used sky replacement, again, for those who might be newer, in the edit menu up here at the top left, if you come down to sky replacement, there is a facility in there that when it outputs with the new sky replacement, one of the layers it outputs is a mask of the objects in the scene and how it masks to show where the sky should show up. And the kind of mask that produces is not as intricate as what the calculations command can handle. So the thing is, too, that I find that, you could spend forever trying to refine a mask. I don't think you'd ever manually be able to do something like this, but the calculations command will handle these complex or intricately detailed selections and then just let you spend the time on the creative stuff, like what you want to make your images look like or how you want to interpret them. And as I said before, I'll just reinforce it. This is not a go-to kind of a tool. So I'd say it's not needed for objects with simple edges. So don't waste your time going through the calculations command for simpler objects. So with that sort of background in mind and that kind of brief introduction, let me pause the video for just a moment. I'll bring up the first image for demo number 1. So hold on. Okay, so now this will be demo number 1 using the calculations command. And in this demo, I'm going to show how to use it with an add blending mode. So that's ADD as in add or subtract. Okay, so this is going to be showing how to use the add blending mode. So I have this stock image of the Eiffel Tower, and I guess I don't have who created it, or I'd give them credit here. We have this cityscape, and we have a couple things that we can see how the calculations command will help with. So first of all, we have all this open work, intricate architectural elements in the Eiffel Tower, and then we also have bare trees in here. So in a more color image, as opposed to the one I just showed you a moment ago, we can kind of kill two birds with one stone here and see how well the calculations command will handle this. Now, as I said, I recommend using a 16-bit image, as well as it has to be an RGB image in order to work with the calculations command. So let me just come up to image mode. And yes, it is RGB, and this one is already 16 bits, so I don't need to convert my image. So I will just click back up there. Before we do anything, let's duplicate the background layers so we're not working on the original. In the layers panel, and mine is up here, you can either click and drag this layer with the left down to this add new layer icon, or do a control or command and J to jump that up to its own duplicate copy. So this is the copy right here. Okay, I'll work with the copy. And the one thing you'll notice here now, unlike the object selection tool or the quick selection tool or things like that, you do not need to make an initial selection to work with the calculations command. So we're going to go to the top of the interface to the image menu right up here at the upper left, click on that and come down about 2/3 of the way to where it says calculations and left click on that. And we get the calculations dialog box that opens up here. And so what we can do is, what our goal is here with this, and as I said in the introduction, see, it's converted my color image to a black and white as soon as we opened that image into the calculations dialog box here. Now, just a reminder, our goal is to create the greatest possible contrast in the subject between the black and the white in areas of the subject, and between it and the surroundings, so that we can isolate it and make selections of it. So let's just go through the dialog box here to see what we have. So you can see that it says source 1 and source 2 in there. So you can either work with a single source or with two different sources. When I talk about sources, I'm talking about documents or files. And I am only going to be working with this single image, so you will see that in mine, source 1 and source 2 will be the same image, but you conceivably might have another document in your layer stack that you want to work with. So that's fine if you want to try that and experiment with that at some point. Just keep in mind that if you want to use a second document from your layer stack, just be sure that both documents have the same pixel dimensions, or else the calculations process won't work properly. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's go through the different commands and elements that we have to work with here. Okay, so, oh, and the other thing to keep in mind is that these settings are sticky. What I mean by that is from when you use it one time to the next time you use it, even though it's been closed, when you reopen it again, you will see the exact same settings as the previous time. So I recommend sort of setting it back. So the first thing I usually do is put the blending mode, clicking here and changing that back to normal so we can see what's happening with the different channels. Okay, so first thing you should do is change your blending mode to normal. You can either click on this little arrow or just click somewhere to the right and then left click, and it'll expand, and then you can go back to normal. Okay. So because you're working with this as two channels, you'll also, as you see it just changed, you'll get a real-time preview of what's happening. So that's why I said it's not too tricky. You can just visually see what's happening here. So we get the name of the document. Then the next thing that you can adjust is the layer that it's working with. And by default, it comes up on merged. What merged means is that if it says merged, it's using all the layers that are in this right-hand layers panel. So typically, I change mine with this down arrow again to be whatever layer I'm working with. In this case, it's my copy layer. So I will click on that and say the layer to work with is the copy layer. And you can see it will automatically, since I'm working with the same source, put that in, populate this other layer. And yours might say background copy, depending on if you drag that down. So just pick the layer that you want to use for the calculations command. Next, you come down and we have the color channels. So, and red is the one that's showing here by default. So again, you can click on that down arrow or click in this box, and then it'll reveal that there are red, green, and blue channels you can experiment with. So we keep a sort of an eye on how the red channel looks, and then we'll see if we can get more contrast by clicking and trying the green channel. Yes, you see the difference there? Let me just go back again. Red, it's blurring more together. So this is going to be a harder kind of an edge because there's less contrast. So if we click and try the green, this is preferable because there's a little bit more contrast there. Let's next try blue and see. Oh, that's definitely better. Okay, so for my image, the blue channel is going to be preferable. So you're just going to have to try it for your image and see which of the red, green, or blue channels gives you the starkest contrast in your image, the greatest white and black or light and dark that you can possibly achieve. Okay. Then we can try it on source 2. And sometimes even for a single image like this, you can get different effects by changing it. So it is possible and fine for you to have either different channels or the same channel. So let's just see if it changes anything. So in this case, it is not changing it. So I'll just leave them on the same channels. But in some cases, you might find that it does make a difference. Okay, so then we come down to blending modes. And I don't know if you're familiar with blending modes in layers, but it will apply, the blending mode will apply between the, will be applied, let me put it that way, to source number 2, and it will help blend it with source number 1. So right now, by default, here I put it back to normal. So what you can do here is with your cursor, just hover over each. So I'm not clicking, I'm just scrolling down, and you can see. So typically multiply, screen, overlay can give you some of the starkest contrast in your image. So some of these for yours might be very good for you. Look at, and you have to look not only with the starkness, but if you're losing the details in your subject. So those are the things you have to keep. So it's not necessarily just which is the darkest. So you can look, see, hard light is very good too here because it's turning things a lot whiter and a lot blacker, and it's keeping the details. There's vivid light. I can't tell if that's getting a little hazier. Normally I'd be more zoomed in. But what's different from the normal layers blending mode is there's this add and subtract blend modes, and they do not appear anywhere else. So you can use those here in the calculations command. So I just want you to quickly look at something. When it's on blending normal or any of those other modes, all you can adjust is the opacity. And what the opacity does is it lets you control the intensity of the effect that you're adding, okay? But if you come back here and use either add or subtract, and we're going to work with add in this demo, let me click on that, then you get these other controls that come up. You get offset and scale, and each of them will help you to darken or lighten the image as needed to create even more contrast while retaining the details. Okay, so that's the benefit of using add or subtract as a blend mode in calculations, because they are unique blend modes and you get this extra little tweaking facility. Now, offset runs from a negative 255, which is black, to positive 255. So it runs from dark on the negative side to light on the positive side. So if you want to make your contrast darker, you will pull this offset into to the left. And what I typically do is I will left click on the word, keep it depressed with the mouse, and just start dragging. You can see the numbers are going lower and lower. So that will make it darker or lighter, okay? So let me see. I might as well do it while I'm here. I'm going to just, usually I try to go a little beyond where I want to be, and then I come back. And I just go in smallish increments. Oh, this is getting a little bit brighter. I'm going to leave mine there. Okay, because I think I've gotten the sky as bright as I can, and I'm ignoring the clouds, and I can still see all the detail here in the Eiffel Tower. I can see the details in all these bare branches, so that's what I'm looking for. I want to try to make a mask out of this, and essentially what I want this to serve as is being basically like a stencil, where anything I don't want to have affected is going to be black by any adjustments I make, and the things I do want adjusted will be white. Okay, so that's my goal. Okay, and then in addition to offset, so again, I went negative, so I made this darker. If you pull it to the right for your image, you will make everything brighter and lighter. And then scale is another way to make things darker or lighter. Scale runs from 1 to 2, so there's a lot of decimals in between. I typically stay just at 1. I don't feel like I have to do a lot to it. I can put it up here a little bit and just see if it helps. But yeah, for me, I just typically generally leave it on 1 as opposed to moving it up. So that's just an FYI. We're going to ignore mask for purposes of this video. So mask will essentially let you create a mask on source number 2, and it's just an extra layer of sophistication. And I think this is complicated enough or complex enough just to get oriented to without talking about adding a mask onto source 2. So let's just skip that. And then finally, we come down to the result. And what you want to use is there's several options here: new document, new channel, or selection. And what you want to use is new channel, okay? And I already showed you, if you're not seeing channels in your right-hand panels here, you just go to the Windows menu here at the top, come down to channels, left click on that, and that'll make your channels panel visible. And again, you will get a much finer selection and better fidelity if you work with channels. Okay. Now, once you get this all set the way you like it, just click OK. And what we see now is that it has highlighted with an overlay here in the right-hand layers panel, that duplicate copy that we're working on. And what it has done is it has created a new alpha channel in the channels panel. So again, we come across to the next tab, which says channels. And again, yours might be at the bottom. Left click on that to reveal the channels panel. And you can see that the channels panel is comprised of a composite red, green, and blue channel, and then individual red, green, and blue channels. So that looks very similar to what we just saw, only, as I said, you get to work with 2 each over there in the calculations command. And it has outputted this alpha channel, and that's what we're looking at here is the alpha 1 channel. Now, we can refine this to make it better to work with as a mask or for selections. And just as an example, I'm going to show how to replace the sky, so I'll keep that in mind when I'm making the refinements. Now, if you want to make any refinements to your alpha channel, what I suggest you do is left click and drag that down to the box with the plus, which is the add new channel icon, and you'll get a copy and work on the copy, not on the original. Because again, if something goes wrong, you still have your original alpha channel. You can toss this out and try again if you make another copy. All right, so the things I want to do in here is to get rid of areas of this image that I am not going to want to be using. So the first thing I want to do here is, first of all, see if I can make the sky whiter. So let me just move this up a little bit. I'm going to press on Control or Command and L, like in Larry, and bring up this levels pop-up box here. And I want to see if so as you know with the levels, we have a histogram here. And so black is at the left, the midtones are at the center, and whites are at the right. So I want to see if I can make the sky a little whiter and lessen the appearance of those gray clouds that would show up. So I'm going to start pulling that white handle a little bit towards the left. And as I do this, and again, keep an eye on your details, make sure that you're not losing the details, because that's sort of the whole point of using this calculations command. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. There we go. All right, and then you can work with the midtones if you want to, or the blacks. Here's a blacks handle right there. Pull that from to the right if you want to make things a little blacker. So I feel pretty good that I got that darker and created more contrast by working with levels. And again, the way I got this pop-up box was Control or Command and the letter L. And then once you get your revision the way you like it, just click OK to accept it, and that adds it to that alpha. Now again, anywhere, as you know with masks, anywhere where there is some white or grays, any adjustments that you make with adjustment layers in the layers panel are going to show up. So let's say, for instance, if I have these buildings showing white or things in here showing slightly grays and I want to add a color, those things are going to get colored. So I want this to become a real stencil or silhouette for these things down at the lower part of the image, and I only want to keep the open work intricate details revealed by this calculations command. So the next thing I'm going to do on my image, and you can figure out for your image what you want to do to achieve it with yours, is to use from the toolbar, and again yours might be on the left, mine is docked right, use the lasso tool, okay, which looks like a little lasso. And I'm going to just loosely, in this dense area, not where the intricate selections are, just start drawing loosely a lasso down here. So I'm not going too close to the edges. And same thing with these buildings. And I'm using a mouse right now, which is kind of clunky. Typically, I would be working for my own work with a stylus and a tablet, but I'm just going to use this for now. Okay, so I've gone all the way across the area I want to be dark, and then when I come across the bottom, look where my cursor is. I come outside the image. I don't try to draw a precise line. And then I come up here until the selection. There we go, have that selection. So now I want that to all be black, so it becomes part of the area that does not get affected by any adjustment layers. So I'm going to press Shift and Backspace. I believe it's Shift and Delete on a Mac, and I get this fill box, and I want to fill that selection with black. So if you just look here, you have some choices. Oops. You should have some choices. There we go. And I wanted to use black, so black is okay. So I'm going to click OK. And if you look inside my selection, now that has all been filled with black. So then I'm going to do a Control or Command D to get rid of those marching ants. Now let me make this a little bigger so we can see what we're dealing with here. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the object selection tool, again from the toolbar. It's this box with the arrow going into, so I'll left click on that to make it active, and you can see the black box behind it. And I'm just going to, again, just draw just outside these buildings, and hopefully with any luck it will make a selection of just this area of the image for me. Yeah, there we go. And I'm not going to be too perfectionist. Oh yeah, I can see it missed some of it, and that's what you have to look for on your own. So it missed some of this. So I want to use my quick selection tool, make the brush a little bigger, a little smaller with the left bracket key, and I want to add to this selection. Well, of course, it's not behaving now. So let me just see if I can do this way quickly. All right. And is it on the building? No, it is not. Hopefully yours will behave better, but typically the object selection tool should do it for you. So what I'm basically doing is I'm creating a boundary or an electric fence or whatever you want to think of it as, that then now I can come down the toolbar and use my brush tool. It looks like a brush right there, and click on that to make it active with the black behind it. And I'm going to come to the top to the option. So each one of these tools has options or features associated with it in its own options bar. And I'm going to come down and click on this down arrow next to this box to pick the kind of brush I want to work with. And when I'm painting like this and don't want to go over edges or have it spill, I use a hard brush, because the soft brush will be soft and it will put a hazy outline around things. So I'm going to use that hard black brush. Make sure that the black, if you're painting black, if you're using white for yours, depending on if you want it to show, you might be using white. I don't want these things to show. I'm using black. Okay, I use the right bracket key and make my brush a little bigger. And then I'm going to paint in here. Now look, see, I'm going over the lines, and that's the benefit of creating that selection, is it forces you to just color inside the lines. When you're painting, you don't have to be quite as careful. Right? And as I said, I was not too perfectionist. I missed some things, so I would be spending more time and not narrating if I was making my own image. So, all right, we got that area that I don't want to be part of the white. So once on yours, you get whatever you want to be white or black painted, then do a Control or Command D to get rid of the selection. And let me come down a little more and just look some more to see what we've got here. And there's a little bit over here that could be, normally again I'd do a selection and make sure it's right, but I'm not gonna. You can spend the time that you need on it. And you notice I'm looking to not, this I think is a building, so I'm gonna paint this in here. Okay, we have another building here. Let's try it again, see if it works this time. To use the object selection tool just in this area here. Yes, that was better that time. So then once I've used that object selection tool to create that boundary, then I come down on the toolbar to the brush tool, and I'm just going to paint inside with the black, and so that'll become part of the silhouette part of my image. Okay, then a Control or Command D to get rid of the marching ants. And, you know, this is something that could be black on mine. This is something that could be black on mine. And again, you can be more precise with a stylus and a tablet. And I think this is part of buildings, so I'm not gonna. All right, so let's just call that good enough, and then Control or Command D, and I'm gonna make this smaller. Okay, so at this point now, I've done the doctoring on the alpha channel, the copy of the alpha channel, to get this as stark a contrast as I can possibly get it to create a mask that we can use to make adjustments to this image of various sorts, okay? So the thing is, you cannot just work with an alpha channel or with a channel on a layer mask. So the first thing we have to do here, now that you get it doctored to however you want your image doctored, is do a control or command and left click on this alpha channel or the copy that you've been working on. And if you'll look at the image, hopefully you'll see that the marching ants are all there. So it's turned it back into a selection again. So what you have to do in order to be able to use this is come to the top of your channels panel and left click on that composite RGB channel. See, it should turn your image, assuming it was a color image, back to color. It still has the active marching ants, and then you want to leave the channels panel and click back on your layers panel. So with your selection from that still active, come to the bottom of your layers panel to this box with the circle, which is the add layer mask, and left click on that. And what it has done is on your duplicate layer in the layers panel, this is the one we had originally used to go to calculations command and the one that generated that alpha channel, we now have that same mask that we can use. And you can see by having the mask, all we have to do is control or command click on it to turn it into a selection. Okay, so if you want to copy it to a new layer, if you want to make adjustments to it, whatever you want to do, this is what the calculations command has enabled us to create. So really, for all intents and purposes, this is the end of the calculations command process. We've taken an original image, we've brought it into image calculations, we've used two different layers, essentially channel layers, if you want to call them that, channels, in order to combine them. So we added them together. That's what the add blending mode is. We added those two sources together. We used a blending mode to get the best possible stark contrasts that we could in the image, exported that output, sent that output back as an alpha channel that we were then able to doctor using levels and just painting with a paintbrush on a copy of the alpha channel. Then we'll be able to activate that mask that we created as a selection and then convert it for use so that we could be using it in layers as a layer mask. So that's what we've gotten to. So that is really the whole process for making a calculations command selection or mask. Now that you have this mask, okay, what can you do with it? Well, with that mask, you could do something like bottom. So this is just examples. Now you can do whatever you want or use whatever adjustments you want once you have your calculations command mask generated. So bottom of the layers panel, you could come to this circle with the line through it, which is the adjustment layer. And I don't know, let's say we want to add some brightness or contrast. Okay, so we've added in our layers panel a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. Currently, by default, adjustment layers get added with a white mask. Well, we can move this mask up to this layer. So, you're not going to start all over again. So you could do Alt or Option, depress it and keep it held down, left click on this mask and just drag it up and release, and it'll say replace layer mask, and you say yes. Now, let me just show you the mask, just to remind you, and I'm sure you're all familiar with masks in Photoshop, but for those of you who are less familiar, I just want to do a quick review. So with masks in Photoshop, anything that's white will reveal or show whatever adjustments or whatever you're doing to that layer. Black will hide whatever adjustments you're making, so there will be no adjustments in the black areas. And anything that's gray will show some changes, okay? So depending on the intensity of the gray. So at this point now, What is white is primarily, or almost all, the sky, okay? There's some gray on the building, on the architecture, okay? So I'm going to close this again. But let's just say we want to make a brightness adjustment here. So you click on thumbnail, and in the properties panel for that brightness layer, mine's at the bottom, yours might be at the top, then you can make the sky brighter or darker, okay? If you want it to be adjusting the building and the trees, or the object, let me call it the object because you may not have that, then what you have to do is with your mask active, and the white frame around it will tell you it's active, in the properties panel for that layer, go to where it says invert and click on it, okay? And look at the mask. We've inverted the mask. So now anything that's black will not be adjusted by brightness and contrast, and anything that's white will, okay? So let's try it again. So if we make this brighter, see, you can adjust, that's the brightness slider. There's the contrast, okay? So you can adjust it. So let's say you swap the sky to be something that's a different time of day. Well, then you may have to, or brighter or something, you may have to make this darker to be realistic, okay? So I'm just telling you, you can be as creative as you want, but having that mask lets you use it with all these different adjustment layers to make whatever adjustments you want to make to your image very selectively. And again, because it's all this intricate detail, as I said, it'll stay on the building if you want it to stay on the building and not start affecting the sky behind it. So let me turn that off and discard that. Let me show you a difference or another example just quickly. And again, this has nothing to do with the calculations command per se. That getting to this point was the end of the calculations process, but I just want to show if you want to use that mask with a sky replacement. We can go up to edit menu, top of the interface, come down to where it says sky replacement, left click on that, and it opens us up into the sky replacement interface here. Okay, and then this was the last sky that I used, so it automatically, let me scoot this over so you can see, it applied that sky to this image. So if you click on this down arrow, and again, this isn't going to be a tutorial on sky replacement, but let me try to put more of a sunset behind this. Am I seeing anything I like? Ooh, okay, I like this one here. All right, so let's click on that one. All right, so it's put that sky. I thought it would look nice with the Eiffel Tower, that sky there. And then once you get the sky, you can just click in this open space. And I'm not going to go through all the detailed edge selections and things I've normally done. Maybe I'll just make this a little warmer. And you can, say whether you want the color to adjust, whatever. But let's just say we have these all the way we like, because this isn't a tutorial on how to use sky replacement. And then I want to output 2 new layers. Okay, so click OK. And then what that does over here on the right in the layers panel, you get this whole sky replacement group. All right, and all the different layers that were automatically created by Photoshop by using sky replacement. Now, one thing I want to show you, and let's see if they make a liar out of me here, is this is the layer where the sky was that I selected and the mask that Photoshop automatically created for that layer. So look at this mask. Look at all this blurry stuff that's in here. So it picked up a lot. Then this is what I'm saying at this point in time, so who knows in years to come how Photoshop's going to evolve and how much better it'll get. But this is why there's a motivation for currently using the calculations command, because this is all mushy gray. And so it's not getting your sky completely behind all these intricate details in a picture like this, okay? So compare that, so let me turn that off, to this, okay? So what you want to do is you can still use your sky replacement, but we want to replace the not so great mask on the sky layer in sky replacement with your calculations command mask. So again, Alt or Option, keep it depressed, left click on this mask because we just want to make a copy of it. We don't want to take it away from that layer. Drag it up to replace that, and when it says the replace layer mask, you say yes. Okay, and let's just be sure. Yeah, so now we've got the calculations command mask on there. And now it should be making a lot cleaner selection and putting the sky behind all these intricate details, okay? And again, I made this a little bit light with that. So let's say I want to go to, I don't know, levels. Maybe we could see if levels would work here. And let me copy, Alter Option, copy this mask up to this layer, replace, yes. Again, I want to affect the architecture and the trees, so that means they have to be white on the mask. So in the Properties panel for that levels, I'm going to invert that mask so we won't affect the sky. And let's just say, so with the thumbnail active and the white frame around it to show it's active, go to the Properties panel for that layer. And I'm just going to see if I can make those buildings and that stuff a little darker by pulling over this hand. There we go. Get a little bit more contrast. And you can just noodle with it till you get it the way you like it. Okay, so again, it's not about sky replacements and showing you how you want to be creative because you won't be working with this image. But the point being is once you get this intricate mask by using calculations command, then you can make whatever adjustments you want, and you can go from an original image that looks something like that to whatever look you want to give your image and retain all these original intricate details. So that is the end of demo number 1. And again, I'm not going to go through all the steps, but what I showed in this version of looking at the calculations command was using it with the add blend mode. So in this demo number 2, I'll show how to work with the subtract blend mode on a different image. So I'm going to again pause the video for a moment and try to bring up that second image that we're going to work with. Hold on. Okay, so now this is demo number 2, and in this one I'll be showing how to use the calculations command using its subtract blend mode. So in demo number 1 we worked with the add, where you added 2 channels together. This one will be working with the subtract to subtract between the 2 different channels. And I'll be using this stock image of the Brooklyn Bridge from a location in Dumbo. And the person who I believe created this was Josh Miller, and this image came from Unsplash, so just to give credit where credit is due. Now, I had mentioned both in the intro and in the last demo that I personally recommend that you work, first of all, you have to work with an RGB image for the calculations command to work, but I suggested that you work with a 16-bit image in order to have a smoother, more high fidelity output. So let's just go up to the image menu at the upper left, down to mode and out, and yes, so this one is already RGB color, which is what you want, and 16-bit, which I recommend, but you certainly can work with 8-bit if you want to. And I'll just left click up there to close that. And I can't give you a formula for when to use the subtract blend mode versus the add blend mode in the calculations command, or any other of the blend modes in the calculations dialog box. I'd have to just say try the different blend mode options with your image to see which produces the best contrast, for your image content. Again, you're trying to get the starkest contrast between blacks and whites while retaining the little details in your image. And so again, we have this image that has all this open work of the Brooklyn Bridge. We have these cables, and as I said, I have the same issue with the Golden Gate Bridge and things like that. And you can see there's these little openings here, so there is just no way these little cables running across the top. There is just no way the current generation of auto selection tools in Photoshop is going to capture those kinds of things. And especially if you're relatively new to Photoshop, it would be very frustrating. So that's why I'm showing you the calculations command for when you have images like this. Okay, so again, as usual, let's duplicate the background layer before you do anything. You can either do a Control or Command J on this background layer, or left click on it and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the box with the plus for the add new layer icon, and that makes a background copy so you're not working on the original. Okay, you don't need to make any selections at the beginning. Just go up to the image menu at the upper left, come down about 2/3 to calculations, and left click on that to open up the calculations dialog box. And I'm not going to go through all of the same explanations of what all of these different things are that I did in demo number 1. But just a quick recap here, that I'm only working on a single image, and so that's what is represented by what is meant by source. And you could have a second different file or document, but they would have to have the same pixel dimensions if you want to work on different images. So for instance, if you were blending and doing compositing, then you might want to have 2 different documents there. Again, layer would be merged if you have a bunch of layers and you want them merged, but I am going to go across to the down arrow and I'm going to select that I want us to work with calculations on my background copy right there, so that's reflecting that. And then again we come down and then individually, first of all, that we want to change the blend mode. See, I told you it retains it, so let's change that to normal so we can see what the impact is of the different channels. Okay, so here's how it looks with the red channel, so sort of keep that in mind and then see if we can get a better result with a different color. So let's try green. Okay, so that's better because you can see this got darker, these got darker. It's not black, but it definitely got darker than it was, and this got a little lighter gray. Let's see what we can do with the blue channel. That's even better. Okay, so more of these details got darker and this became a pale gray. So again, I am really looking to separate these buildings and the ground and even the solid areas of the bridge as the silhouette against anything where you can see through to the light. Okay, now again, we're going to work with the Brooklyn Bridge. Let's just try again. It's where it should be on. We're working with the background copy. Let's just see if there's any difference here between red, green, and blue channels. No. So those are staying the same. So again, I'm just going to leave both of my channels as the blue channel. So again, the next thing we do is we come down to the blending modes and just click the down arrow and you can hover down all of them. And again, for yours, you feel perfectly free if you want to use any of these other ones. It's just keep in mind the only adjustment you will have if you use any other than add and subtract is you will only be able to adjust the opacity, and that might be perfectly fine if you get a really good stark contrast with one of the blend modes, other blend modes. But as I said, let's try subtract this time. So click on subtract, and we've got the blending mode, and again we get these extra settings of opacity, offset, and scale. So opacity, as I said, it affects the intensity, so I'm just always going to leave mine personally at that. You might want to adjust it if we were to get into what the mask was on this source too, but we're not going to do that. Okay, so as you can see, it's completely covered everything up with gray. And the reason why it's turning gray is because we're subtracting one channel from the other. So that's why nothing is showing up there. So if I go back up to source number 1, and let's just see if we can bring back some image content by clicking on this little invert box here on next to that channel for source 1. There we go. So now that's even better than it was, as if you remember, for the blue channels there, because it was a darkish gray and a kind of a murky. So this has gotten even better improved. So now that we've inverted with subtract as a blend mode, we're getting closer to where we have usable content, because look, you can still see all these little cables and stuff like that. So next I want to go back to adjusting my offset and my scale. So, oh, it's actually pretty good here. Let me see if I can make this any bigger. Because again, anything I adjust, I want to be sure I'm keeping the intricate details like these little cables. All right, so I just want to get it where I can see it. So again, I'm going to keep opacity 100%. We can see if by making this any brighter in the sky, so what did I say before? Left and offset into the negative numbers will make the image darker. Positive numbers above 0 will make it brighter. So we want to see if we can get a little more brightness as contrast to the black. Let's see what we can do here. But I don't want to lose. No, it's making those cables lighter. So let me just crank it up a little bit so you can see. Yeah, see, we're getting more whiteness, but we're losing. It's going to start breaking up just like other selections. So I think we need to stay back closer to that area where it initially was. We go back down a little bit the other way. And it's getting a little gray. So I think that was sort of the sweet spot there, around 75 or 77. All right. And then, as I said, with scale, the scale runs from 1 to 2. So there's just lots of decimals. So you can try left click. So again, just if you didn't watch demo number 1, to change the numbers the way I did, you can left click on the word offset, keep it depressed, and either drag right to increase the numbers positively, or click and drag left to make the numbers more negative or make them smaller. Scale, same thing. You can left click and drag if you want to. In here, you can see the scale numbers are going up. See if that helps anything or hurts anything. I'm not seeing much difference. So I'm just going to leave mine where it is. And again, be sure that your result is going to or your output is going to a new channel once you get your image with a good stark contrast like that, so that all the details are showing. Click OK. Let me scoot this over. And so again, what will happen is as soon as you've clicked OK from the calculations command and sent your output back, on the layers panel, it'll put this highlight here to show you, hey, there's something in the channels panel. So then just go across, and again, your layers and channels might be down here. And just a quick reminder, if you're not seeing a channels panel, go up to Window and click on Channels to open it. So click on that Channels tab to open the Channels panel. And again, you can see there's no eye visibility on the composite RGB channel or any of the individual red, green, or blue channels, but your Alpha 1 channel that's been created by the calculations command is highlighted and active. And we want to doctor it some more, just like I did in the first demo, to make this a cleaner mask to use with various adjustments in the layers panel. So again, let's not work on the original. So we'll just left click on this Alpha 1 channel, drag it to the bottom of the channels panel to the box with the plus, which is the add new channel icon. We get a copy, and then we can make whatever modifications or doctoring we want to do to this with that copy. Okay, so again, I'm going to do the same kind of thing I did in Demo 1, using my lasso tool from the toolbar. Again, my toolbar is right, yours might be left. I'm just going to start loosely drawing a lasso inside what I want to be the solid areas of my mask. And I'm going to come down here to these buildings. And this is building back here, so I'm trying to, and I won't go too close to the edge. This is building with windows, so I'm not wanting anything that is things we would see through the intricate details covered by black. And this really is clunky to work with a mouse. I should have had my stylus handy. All right, and then as you can see, I come outside the frame of the image to trace around so that I'm not missing anything. And then just be sure to close your selection once you get that selection. So again, this is all, I want this all to be black and to be sort of become a silhouette for the mask. So I'll press Shift and backspace or Shift and delete to get the fill box. And then I want to fill it with black in this case, so that's good. So I'll click OK, and you can see it has done that. So then to get rid of the marching ants, Control or Command D, and then we can doctor this some more. So again, we'll try it again, see how it works. These things never work when you're doing a demo. So I'm going to go to my toolbar. Again, mine's docked right. Grab my object selection tool, which is that box with the arrow into it. And I'm just going to draw around this area here, and hopefully it'll select those things that are in the grayish colors. Yeah, so that's good. And what I'm doing, as I explained in demo number 1, if you didn't see it, is creating a little barrier so I can use my paintbrush tool from the toolbar right there, make sure it's active, with the black paint as foreground color, and I have mine on a hard brush. And I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger with the right bracket key. And I'm going to paint out these things that I don't want to show up as part of my mask or part of my selection, okay? So by having that selection, it prevents you from going over the lines and painting into the areas that are supposed to be white. Once you get that painted, it's a Control or Command D. Do this again with the object selection tool from the toolbar. I'm going to make around these things that I don't want showing because that's not part of the intricate open work. In fact, let me come here because this should be included. So hopefully it'll capture it. No. All right, and I'm going to come back to the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to paint with the black as the foreground color. Control or Command D to stop the marching ants. Let's see if I can get this. I'll try it one more time and then give up if it doesn't work. There we go. And then the paintbrush tool with the black foreground. There we go. Control or Command D. I'm not going to mess with this. I mean, you can do it here. I can just do it directly with the brush because that's a building back there. And it should be part of this other area. And then over here again, I'll use my object selection tool. And notice I'm not going too far away from the edges because I don't want to capture things I don't want it to capture. Paintbrush tool, black foreground color. And again, whenever I'm saying black, if you're wanting to paint white on yours, paint white where you want it to be revealed, black where you want it to be hidden. Okay, Control or Command D to get rid of the marching ants. So let me make this a little bigger, and I'm making mine Control or Command plus to make this a little bigger. Now, this part of the bridge, maybe I should make it a little bigger yet, is not open work. This is details on the bridge, but it's not open work. So I want to make that part of my solid black area for my image too. So areas where you don't want to have affected, you should just make it a solid color, whether it's the white or the black. But you can see we've got the open work there. We've got the cables here. So I am going to again, use the paintbrush tool this time. Well, maybe I'll try something else. Let's come up, it'll be easier to do it, I think. Come up to the lasso tool and see that little down arrow, right click on that, and let's use the polygonal lasso tool. It should swap that into this wacky little polygon icon should be there, and it'll say it's active. And if you haven't used it before, maybe you saw it in my architectural one, you just left click to create an anchor point and then drag out. So I'm just going to click and drag out. And again, I'm not going to be too perfectionist for purposes of this demo. But just know that for my own, yeah, that's not open work. I'm just going to do this very roughly around here. So you be much more careful following the lines. And if you remember from the polygonal lasso tool, if I mentioned it in the architectural video, in order to close the selection, if you look where my green highlighter is and the little icon is, if you see a little circle appear, that's when you can close the selection. And then the same thing, Shift, Backspace, or Delete, and then I'm going to fill that with black. Okay, and then Control or Command D. And then one other place I'm going to do it is because I don't want things appearing in here. So now this time, and let me just go back to my default lasso tool so I don't get confused, use the paintbrush tool again. And this time I am using, if you come to the options bar for the paintbrush tool and come over to where you see the brush tip and click that down arrow, I'm using a hard brush so it won't spill, and I'm using a square brush because I'm going to be coming down this sort of square object shape here. Okay, so I just want it to stay in there. Let me make this a little bigger. And again, you won't be working with this image, but I'm just showing you ways you can doctor your image so you have things to keep in mind. So I'm going to make this so it stays within the line. So again, I would tinker more if I was doing this for a real image, but for demo purposes, you get the idea. Just stay so you don't spill out over into these other areas. And I'll left click there with the square brush and the black foreground color. Then I'm going to press and hold my Shift key so it'll come down in a straight line and I don't have to paint. There we go. And so that's good. And I'm going to call this good enough. I'm not going to worry. Normally I would do, well, let me do it. Don't be a perfectionist. It's really a bad thing. Okay, so that's good enough for this. So I'm going to do a control and make that smaller. Okay, so let's just say at this point I am happy with how I have doctored this alpha channel that was sent back here from the calculations command, and whatever doctoring you want to do. Now let's say, all right, maybe one more thing we might try here. Do the control or command and L, the letter L. And let's just bring up this levels and see if we can get just a little bit more whiteness in that mask where the sky is without losing the details. So on my histogram, I'm pulling the handle from the whites a little bit over. Let me make this a little bigger. Make sure I'm not losing any details where I have like the fine cables. That's the whole point. Okay, so let's call that good enough. So you just know that you have that at your disposal, that if you do either a control or command L for levels, or if you prefer working with curves, it's a control or command M, and then you'd get a curves box with the M. Click OK. All right, so let's say this is in good shape. So now we cannot use this channel as it is as a layer mask. We have to convert it back and copy it, whatever. So we do a control or command, keep it depressed, and left click on that alpha channel to make the selection active. And for some reason, it's not getting all that, but I'm not going to worry about it right now because this is just a demo. All right. And then before we can go back to the layers panel, you have to click on your composite RGB channel in the channels panel. There you can see now it's activated all of those layers. It's changed it back to a color image. And now with your selection still active, you can go back to the layers panel, come to your background copy with that layer active. You can tell it's active with this frame around it and the highlight. Come to the bottom of the layers panel to this box with the circle, which is the add new layer mask. And then we now have our mask that was created by the calculations command on that layer. Okay, so we are in good shape. So we've done all this doctoring, we've created the black and white stencil, and now we're able to use that stencil as a mask on the layers in the layers panel. Now that again is the end of the calculations command process and how you would make a selection of a very intricate subject or object with calculations. You can see again, this would never be selected with any of the automated selections in Photoshop. So at this point now you can make whatever desired enhancements you want to your mask. Now, granted, again, if I was going to be really detailed about this and precise and perfectionist, I would have put some black, probably using the polygonal lasso tool, in each of these big white cables, but I'm not going to take the time to do that and have you have to watch me do that with this image. But any place on your image you can do those kinds of things. So let's just say, all right, here we are in Brooklyn. They have a photo show in Brooklyn either every year or twice a year called Photoville. And let's say we wanted to use this photograph of the Brooklyn Bridge and the park where they hold Photoville to make a poster. So I want to maybe change this, and I will convert my image so that, let's say, the buildings and the bridge are a green color, and then there's some kind of an orangey or red sky, because green and red pop as complementary colors. So to add the dark green color to the buildings, I want to come to my layers panel. And again, you're not going to be doing this, but just to show you this as an example, the kind of thing you can do. I'm going to come down to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new adjustment layer icon, which is that circle with the line through it. I'm going to pick a solid color, and I said I wanted to work with the green, so I would click in the greens. And let's see, pick something darker. Okay. Yeah, let me do something like that. Okay, so I've picked a green that I want by just clicking in this color picker, and then I'll say okay. And of course, it's completely covering this image. So what I want to do is, again, copy that mask so it's usable. Now I can do actually another thing. I can clip this layer here, but let's just keep it simple and copy that layer. So Alt or Option, keep it depressed, left click on that mask and drag it up to replace the white layer mask and say yes. Okay, so now because the white works on what's happening in this layer, it's going to make the sky white, and we don't want that to happen. We want the buildings and the bridge to be the green. So we need to reverse or invert this mask. So with this color fill layer active, go to the properties for that layer and invert the mask. Okay, and now it's doing what we want it to. It's made the buildings, the bridge, and the cables green using the inverted mask. Okay, so anything that's white is going to get that color. That's why we had to invert the mask. Now, if you want this to look like a real illustration, you can leave it just like this kind of thing with the solid color on it. If you want your photograph to still be visible through the color, then again we would use a blend mode. And in the layers panel, where it says normal, that's one of the blend modes. So you'd come there, click on the down arrow, and come all the way down until you get to the color blend mode, and then left click on that. And then that will bring back your image. It'll apply the color because it's blending the color with your image, and it'll put the color on your image but make the details visible. Okay, so that's one way you can use that. Now, the next thing I said I wanted to do was to put some orange or something more interesting, make it sort of sunsetty looking for a poster, if it's a hypothetical poster. So bottom of the layers panel, I'm going to add a new empty layer here. So come down to the add new layer icon, which is that box with the plus, and there you see it's an empty transparent layer, and this is going to become the sky effect. Okay, or a sky adjustment, whatever you want. Now, I'm not doing a replace sky like I did in demo 1. I'm just going to put color back there this time. So in the toolbar, I'm going to come back down to the gradient tool. It's this box that looks like it has a gradient from black to white, so left click on that. Make sure it's black so you know that it's active. And again, as I said, all these tools have their own settings or options, and the options are across the top. So this says I'm working with you can either work with the classic gradient or the live gradient. I like the new gradient because you can change it in real time. And let's just see here. I want something more sunset-y looking. So let's go maybe down. So once you click on that down arrow, you can see all the different gradients. I've added some of my own, but there's a whole bunch that come with Photoshop. And I'm going to look for something sky. I don't know, maybe this one here. Let's see how that works. And I'm going to use a linear gradient. Okay, so I'm going to click up here. This is the linear gradient, that little first icon, and that'll just pull out these colors in sort of a straight line, you know, across as you pull it out. The radial gradient will pull it out in kind of a circular shape. So I'm going to stick with the linear and just click and pull. There we go. Yeah, so I mean, with sunsets and things, it's usually a little lighter, closer to the ground. So you get these color stop handles at either end, so you can just click on it and move them around if you want. And since the light seemed to be coming from that direction, I'm going to put this over this way in that image. And then you can click on this one and drag it over here. And you can pull it up and down and have it, you know, as far up as you want. And then you get this little diamond in the middle that's the midpoint, and by pulling that, you can say if you want more dark red, you pull it down. If you want more of the whatever the color the other color is, you pull it up. So I'll keep that sort of up in that area there. Okay, and now I want to again bring my mask in there, but this time I want it to be the sky mask. Okay, so that's the one where the sky is white. Yeah. So I'm going to Alt or Option, keep it depressed, left click on that mask where the sky is white, pull it up. There we go. And so now we've got our, and you can see, so if you would, if I'd been wanting to keep these dark like they should have been, then I would have masked those out on when I was doing those other selections. But on yours, just take the time and do all the things you want. But, you know, we've created kind of an interesting poster effect, and we've gotten all of the cutout details in the bridge. You can still see, you know, and again, I didn't spend the time that you could do with yours, but you can see literally all the cables there that you would not see. In other selections in Photoshop, these would mostly be broken or missing. So, you know, it's just given the colors I've selected and the time I've spent doing this, you're not seeing as dark as it can be, but there's a lot more details here than would be in typical selections. So that is what I wanted to show you with the calculations command. So in summary, to wrap this all up, the calculations command is one of the lesser known Photoshop functions, but it is very powerful for making intricate or complexly detailed selections. At this point in time, it is still better than most of Photoshop's automated selections tools and select and mask, even for select and mask, even though you can go over it with the edge awareness brushes and things like that, this is still better for complicated selections. But I'd say definitely do not go through all this rigmarole and all these steps for subjects that have simpler edges. Just use something like the quick selection, object selection tool or quick selection tool or things like that. They would be much faster for you. Reminder, I will include the links to other workshops on my channel for making and refining selections in case you're interested in working with some of the more usual selection tools and processes. And by the way, so one last thing, nothing to do with calculations. If there are Photoshop topics that you would like me to prepare future tutorials on or workshops on, please just post a note in the comments below the video saying what you'd like to learn about. And then if there are some consistent interest, or if there's a topic that you'd like to have me develop a workshop around, I will try to prioritize that versus from my wish list of things that I'm working on and then trying to develop. So take care, have fun, and enjoy exploring the calculations command.